Imagine hiking through an ancient wild nature reserve. You're surrounded by shifting sands and wild heather, and suddenly rising straight out of the wilderness is this colossal concrete sphinx. Welcome to the debate.
Yeah, it really is an incredible sight to stumble upon.
It absolutely is. Today, we are looking at the geography and architecture of the Netherlands, specifically the provinces of Drenthe and the Veluwe, to examine a pretty profound structural question. We are taking this stunning architectural anomaly, Radio Kootwijk, and using it to ask a core question.
Right. Is true meaning and freedom found in the rigid structures we engineer, like the massive grid, the machine, and the architectural blueprint? Or does it emerge exclusively from the gnarled, natural imperfections, the meandering rivers, the raw landscape, and human flaws?
Exactly. And I'll be taking the stance that these rigid structures, our human engineering and logistical grids, are the essential foundation. They are the exact mechanisms that make human existence, stability, and peace possible.
And I take the stance that the rigid grid is really merely a tool. It's a cold simulation. True human freedom and what I would call high-resolution meaning actually resides in the gnarled reality. It's found in nature's stubborn paths, ancient erratic stones, and the literal flaws in our architecture.
Well, to start, meaning fundamentally requires a structural frame to hold back chaos. I mean, when you look at human engineering, it provides the watts, the sheer power and presence for society to actually function.
Okay, but at what cost to the landscape?
Well, look at the Vamberg in Drenthe. It's known locally as the Roof of Drenthe, sitting at a 48-meter-high peak, but it is entirely man-made. It was built from a former landfill by a waste disposal company.
Literally a mountain of garbage.
A mountain of garbage that we took and engineered into a point of stability and utility. That exact same drive built the massive transmitters of Radio Kootwijk in the 1920s to broadcast radio waves across the globe. It laid down the perfectly straight logistical lines of the A28 and N34 highways. These rigid structures, they give us a reliable baseline.
A baseline, sure, but a perfectly engineered baseline is totally devoid of texture. If we look at Drenthe, the profound geographical value isn't the straight highway. It's the Drentse Air.
The river?
Yes, the river. This is one of the extremely rare Dutch river systems left unstraightened. It meanders naturally. It aggressively refuses to be a canal. And if we step inside your prime example, the cathedral of the machine at Radio Kootwijk, the most powerful element isn't the concrete frame.
It's the architecture, surely.
No, it is the vefault, the deliberate weaving error, a tiny flaw in the otherwise flawless black and white tile floor. These handmade imperfections are what prove we are not just cogs in a mechanical loop.
Okay, but you're staring at a few misplaced tiles on the floor and entirely ignoring the 50,000 tons of mathematical perfection right above your head.
I'm not ignoring it, I'm just...
Radio Kootwijk is a masterclass in calculation. I mean, it is reinforced concrete explicitly designed to bridge two sides of the planet, connecting the Netherlands to the East Indies. It is a monument to human ambition, conquering the absolute silence of distance. The achievement is the building, not the error.
Radio Kootwijk was built as a rigid broadcast of imperial power, yes. But its psychological weight today comes from how humans react to being inside it.
How do you mean?
Well, the human brain is neurologically wired to look for organic variation. When we enter a massive, perfectly symmetrical concrete grid, our brain registers it as unnatural, even predatory, like a trap.
A trap? That's a bit extreme.
A perfectly sterile floor in a concrete bunker is terrifying to the subconscious. That single weaving error, that weave out, is the psychological escape hatch. It's visual, tangible proof that human hands capable of error laid those tiles. Without that snag in the fabric, Radio Kootwijk is just an intimidating monument to ruthless efficiency.
Huh. Think about how music works, though. The rigid structure of the building is the metronome. It's the relentless 4/4 beat that keeps society from collapsing into pure noise.
Right.
The gnarled flaw on the floor, your weave out, is the syncopation. It's the jazz. but you cannot have the groove of the jazz without the rigid beat of the metronome beneath it. Consider the 17th century Atlas Meyer by John Blaeu.
Oh, the massive map collection.
Exactly. At the time, it was the largest, most expensive book in the world. Blaeu took the massive archives of the Dutch East India Company, the VOC, and forced the entire globe into an ultimate precise grid. Without the rigid, calculated geometry of that map, or the tiles of Radio Kootwijk, the gnarled flaws wouldn't be beautiful. They would just be chaos.
But the map is an illusion of control on paper. And humans, unfortunately, don't just stop at paper. When we can't control the map, we physically force the Earth to bend to our will. Which brings us right back to your Vomsberg.
The manufactured peak.
Yes, we literally built a mountain out of garbage just to have an engineered high point. We manufactured a cycling destination because we couldn't stand the flat grid.
It is pure, brilliant structural transformation. I mean, utility extracted from a literal waste.
But it completely lacks ancient weight. It is a superficial, engineered height. If you want to talk about true architectural gravity and strength, you have to look at the Hunebedden.
The megalithic tombs.
Exactly. These are built from erratic boulders weighing up to 20 tons each, and they weren't engineered with supply chains or corporate utility. They were pushed there by the Sale glaciation.
The Ice Age glaciers.
Right. Essentially a continental-sized bulldozer of ice from the last ice age 150,000 years ago. The ancient builders who arranged them used no mortar, no blueprints. They represent an immutable, deep-time permanence that operates on a geological scale, not a human debt-driven one.
They are impressive, I'll grant you that.
And ironically, Drent's true natural high point isn't your trash mountain. It's a small dune called Hansje Dune, sitting quietly at just 26.5 meters. The Hunebedden hold a gravity that human engineering can just never manufacture.
Wait, are you suggesting we should revere static rocks over dynamic human progress?
Yes, the Hunebedden survived from millennia, but they are literally monuments to the dead.
They are monuments to human connection with the Earth.
But modern human existence requires velocity. It requires reliable infrastructure. We need the modern N34 highway, which, by the way, locals actually call the Hunebed Highway, to connect us. Think about someone driving down that road in a modern, perfectly engineered vehicle like a Toyota RAV4.
Escaping the city.
Exactly. They are using that highly engineered asphalt grid specifically so they can efficiently escape to ancient, quiet sanctuary villages like Zuidlaren or Teinarlo. The rigid highway is universally what makes our access to the quiet landscape possible. You just can't reach the sanctuary without the line.
I'd argue the highway is just a transit tube. It is a low-resolution living. You're just fast-forwarding through geography.
Fast-forwarding is sometimes necessary.
But high-resolution living requires abandoning the road entirely. If you want to experience actual freedom, you don't stay in your climate-controlled car on the N34. You take the hike near Udemolen.
By the windmill.
Yes, you walk past the old windmill, cross the fields with the Scottish Highland cattle, and you cross the Drenchka A over a narrow, unsteady bridge. You get your boots wet in the mud. You watch the white storks nesting overhead.
It's idyllic. Sure.
It's real. That deceleration, forcing your body to slow down to the exact meandering speed of the gnarled landscape, is the ultimate act of freedom. The road just teleports you. Getting your feet wet in the river is where life actually happens.
Look, the wet boots in the mud is a tactile, beautiful experience. I completely agree. But it is fundamentally a temporary escape, and the entire concept of an escape relies entirely on possessing a structured, secure base to return to.
I'm not so sure it's just an escape.
Think about the universal human desire for a home base. There's a regional singer here, Daniel Lohus, who sings the blues in the local Drents dialect. One of his central anthems is about a simple Hoosmithen tune, a house with a garden.
Oh, I love that song.
Old blues of the river absolutely requires the rigid sanctuary of a dry, engineered house to resonate. You only enjoy the wet, freezing mud because you know you have a dry, perfectly level floor waiting for you.
But a perfectly level floor only matters because the wet mud exists outside. A perfectly engineered life, completely insulated from the wet feet, from the friction of the landscape, is just a clinical, sterile simulation.
I wouldn't call a warm house a simulation.
The house with a garden isn't supposed to be a fortress against nature, though. It's a vantage point to participate in it. The builders of the Hunebedden understood this intuitively. They integrated their massive 20-ton stones directly into the gnarled landscape without trying to pave over it or grid it out. They built anchors in the stream of time, not highways to bypass it.
Well, we've laid out two fundamentally different ways of interacting with the physical world today. From my perspective, the rigid structures, the masterful concrete calculations of Radio Kootwijk, the strict 17th century grid of the Atlas Major, and the modern asphalt of the N34 highway, they provide the survival mechanisms. They are the metronome, the velocity, and the shelter required for us to build a sustainable society.
And I maintain that the gnarled elements, the unstraightened, meandering Drencha, the 20-ton Ice Age boulders of the Hunebedden, and that vital humanizing weaving error in the floor of the cathedral, are where the actual meaning lives. Without the friction of nature and the imperfection of human hands, the grid is basically just a cage.
It's fascinating because the geography of Drent and the imposing presence of Radio Kootwijk and the Veluwe perfectly encapsulate this dual necessity. You physically need the reliable infrastructure of the modern highway just to reach the ancient wet-footed crossing of the river.
That's very true. You really cannot truly feel the silence of the concrete sphinx without first knowing the wildness of the heather outside its doors.
Absolutely. Exploring this geography reveals the incredible psychological complexity of how we build our world. I mean, we are creatures that engineer rigid grids to survive, but we require gnarled flaws to feel alive. We need the concrete to protect our bodies, but we clearly need the meandering river to protect our minds. There are certainly plenty more maps to unfold and landscapes to walk in this material, but we'll leave it there for today.